The escort agency received a new task, asking me to escort an official's daughter back to the capital. Since I was raised as a boy, I have a particular fondness for those sweet and gentle young ladies. Along the way, I did my best to make her happy. But the young lady was cold and didn't pay much attention to me. She only asked for my name when I was leaving the capital. 3 months later, a marriage decree was sent from the capital. But, can someone tell me? How did the sweet and gentle young lady turn into the crown prince? Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Before leaving home, my father repeatedly reminded me that the official's daughter had a noble status and told me to curb my dissipated and unrestrained nature. I twitched my mouth. "Father, I'm a girl." My father was stunned and muttered, "Almost forgot. A month ago, our Tiger Escort agency received a big order, saying they wanted us to escort an official's daughter back to the capital. I didn't want to take the order, but they offered too much. As the top fighter of Tiger Escort agency, I naturally became the leader. When we picked up the young lady, it was a brilliant evening at dusk. She was dressed in a flowing white dress, wearing a veiled hat, with a tall and slender figure. What a peerless beauty, one that could outshine the moon and shame the flowers. Riding on a tall horse, I couldn't help but click my tongue. The subordinate next to me was shocked. "Young master, the boss told you to restrain yourself." Before I could speak, he added, "Besides, this young lady is just average." I glanced at him lightly. "She's wearing a hat." The subordinate looked embarrassed, "But she has no chest." I punched him off the horse. "Shallow." Since I was raised as a boy by my family, I have no resistance to such sweet and gentle young ladies. Seeing that the young lady had already boarded the carriage, I rode my horse to the front of the team. I whistled to the back and shouted, "Count the numbers. Ready to set off." After speaking, I glanced at the carriage and said with a smile, "Young lady, hold on tight, the road ahead is not easy." It was springtime, with wildflowers all over the roadside, looking beautiful against the bright sunset. I turned my head to look at the tightly closed carriage and couldn't help but slow down. The horse kept pace with the carriage, and I reached out to knock on the window. "Young lady, the scenery outside is great, you can open the window and take a look." There was no response from inside. I raised an eyebrow, said nothing, casually picked a few wildflowers, and stuck them in the window gap. "Here, a little something for you, take a peek yourself." Without waiting for her response, I nudged the horse's belly and moved to the front of the team again. But after a while, when I looked back, the wildflowers outside the window were gone. I curled my lips. TSK, young ladies are easy to please. The team traveled smoothly for 3 days. The subordinate asked me, "Young master, why did they send you for such a simple task?" I looked at the dense forest in the distance. Who knows? Maybe they were captivated by my handsome and charming self. I admit you're handsome and charming, but you could be a bit more modest, or you won't find a wife. I glanced at him, said nothing. Indeed, except for my father and my deceased mother, no one knew my female identity. Anyway, finding a wife is still easier for me than for you. I patted his shoulder, showing sympathy. As we spoke, a flock of birds suddenly flew up from the distant forest. They circled and flew away, then gradually landed on the branches. I frowned and gestured with my hand. "Stop!" The subordinate, "What's wrong?" "Something's not right." As soon as I finished speaking, a group of masked men rushed out from the front, brandishing long knives with a fierce momentum. "Protect the young lady!" I shouted, grabbing the long spear from my shoulder and blocking the first batch of assassins. Then I immediately jumped onto the carriage behind, pulling the horsewhip, "Hiya!" The carriage broke through the encirclement and rushed straight ahead. "Young lady, you really need to hold on tight this time." After all, the carriage couldn't outrun the horses, and the masked men behind quickly caught up. I thought for a few seconds, reached into the carriage. "Come out quickly! We have to abandon the carriage." The person inside hesitated for only a moment, then grabbed my hand and climbed out of the carriage. I swung the spear to cut the reins. And at the last moment of separation, I took the young lady onto the horse. I looked at the young lady, who was half a head taller than me, and fell into deep thought. As expected of a wealthy family's daughter, her height is quite unusual. But like this, it really obstructs my view. You should sit behind me. The young lady was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. I held her waist with one hand and moved her from the front to the back. So heavy. She looked thin, but her frame is not small. Once the young lady finally sat steadily, I breathed a sigh of relief. Hold on to my waist, hold tight. The horse carried the two of us swiftly into a side path. The assassin was shaken off. When I returned from scouting the terrain down the mountain, the lady had already removed her veil and was standing in a large grove of maple trees waiting for me. A gentle breeze brushed against the hem of her clothes. Her long hair was pinned at the back of her head with a simple jade hairpin. Her face pale, her demeanor cold and aloof. I stood there, a bit mesmerized. This young lady was different from all the other women I had seen. Her long, narrow eyes added a heroic spirit that ordinary women did not possess. I snapped back to reality and strode toward her. This place is quite secluded, you can rest assured. The lady nodded, saying nothing. I looked at her and couldn't help but say, I saved your life. She raised her eyes to look at me, her thin lips slightly parted. So what? It was the first time I heard her speak. And her voice was different from ordinary women, a bit hoarse, but pleasant. I was taken aback for a moment. Aren't you going to thank me? The lady glanced at me. I paid you silver. That makes a lot of sense. She continued, at 10 times the usual price. Shouldn't you ensure my safety? I instinctively said, 10 times? She frowned and said nothing. Damn it! My father only gave me double the silver. This place is indeed very secluded. Not only could the assassins not find us, but neither could the people from the escort agency. After dark, the forest was eerily quiet. I returned from hunting outside, a bit excitedly shouting, Miss Chin, I found a great place. The young lady's name was Chin Mu, which she only told me after I asked multiple times. Chin Mu turned to look at me, and before she could respond, I grabbed her wrist. Come on! I'll show you! She stumbled as I pulled her up, her voice somewhat displeased. I don't. You'll definitely like it once you see it. I led her out of the cave, following the markers up the mountain. At the top of the mountain, there was an extremely hidden hot spring. I stood by the spring, pointing it out to her. Look. Chin Mu's eyebrows relaxed a bit. I said, on the way here, you probably got a lot of dust and dirt on you, you can wash it off. Chin Mu was startled for a moment, then suddenly turned to look at me. I was taken aback, quickly realizing. Well, I'm not trying to take advantage of you. Actually, I'm also a woman. Chin Mu's eyes widened slightly, looking at me in disbelief. It was the first time I saw such an expressive look on her face. I knew she didn't believe me. Helplessly, I sighed and then took her hand, placing it on my chest. Feel it, I'm wearing a chest binder. She flung my hand away, her expression a bit flustered. I was already standing unsteadily, and with her push, I lost my balance and fell straight into the hot spring beside us. Water splashed all over Chin Mu. I stood up from the water, wiping my face haphazardly. When my vision cleared, I only saw Chin Mu's quickly departing back. I hurriedly called out, wait a minute. Chin Mu stopped with her back to me. I lowered my voice a bit, Miss Chin, are you really not going to soak in the hot spring? She didn't turn her head, no. As I was taking off my clothes, I asked her, then could I trouble you with something? Chin Mu, go ahead. I sighed, could you come a bit closer? The mist above the hot spring was thick, I couldn't see her, she couldn't see me. Talking like this was a bit uncomfortable. Chin Mu said nothing, and after a while, I heard her approaching. She stopped abruptly a few steps away from me. Her voice changed tone, what are you doing? I looked at my bare body and honestly said, soaking in the hot spring. This lady is really strange, she won't soak, and she won't let me soak either? Chin Mu's voice deepened, then why did you call me over? The lady is not only strange but also has a bad temper. I didn't dawdle any longer, took a small medicine bottle from the clothes I had taken off, and placed it by the hot spring. Could you please help me apply some medicine? I really can't reach. Just applying medicine, yet Miss Chin took the time of a whole incense stick to slowly walk over. I was about to turn around, but she pressed my shoulder. Don't turn around. I was taken aback. Okay. Anyway, the wound was on my back, no need to turn around. I lay on the smooth stone, closing my eyes. Thank you. The person behind me didn't move for a long time. The wound on your back, how did it happen? I lightly ah-ed, nonchalantly saying, got cut accidentally while fighting those assassins. Chin Mu said nothing, squatting behind me with the medicine bottle. I felt the atmosphere was a bit tense, jokingly said. What? My back is different from you noble ladies' backs. Much uglier, with countless scars of all sizes. I laughed, applying medicine for me really wrongs you. The laughter stopped abruptly, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Chin Mu silently sprinkled the medicine powder on my unhealed wound. This lady! Really fierce. I was mistaken, thinking that a young lady would be meticulous in applying medicine. But who would have thought it was better if I did it myself? I winced in pain, and Chin Mu put down the medicine bottle. Done. I gritted my teeth. Thank you. Chin Mu, no need to thank me. I lay on the rock without speaking, closing my eyes for a while. When I woke up again, the moon was already hanging high in the sky. I got dressed and was about to leave when I saw Chin Mu not far away, her back facing me. Miss Chin? Why haven't you gone back yet? She turned her head and glanced at me indifferently. Let's go. I was taken aback. Was she waiting for me on purpose? Before I could respond, she started walking ahead on her own. I couldn't help but smile. Though the young lady is a bit fierce, she's quite nice. After returning to the cave, drowsiness began to overwhelm me. I started a fire, made some barriers at the cave entrance. And when I went back, Chin Mu seemed to have already fallen asleep. I tisk-ed, draping a relatively clean cloak over her. The night wind was strong, and the young lady was delicate. It would be troublesome if she caught a cold. I leaned against the stone wall and slowly closed my eyes with my clothes on. The next morning, I was awakened by a rustling sound. Years of habit made me flip over and stand up immediately. The cloak slipped off my body and fell to the ground. I was stunned and instinctively turned my head to look beside me. It was empty. Without time to think, I strode to the cave entrance and lifted the barrier. Dozens of people stood at the entrance, all turning their heads to look at me. The subordinate waved at me, young master. I touched my nose and bent down to exit the cave. When did you find me? The subordinate, it's been a while, seeing you sleep soundly, we didn't wake you. I gave him a subtle look. I have always been a light sleeper. Looking around, I frowned and asked him, where is Miss Chin? The subordinate tilted his head to look behind me, nodding his chin. There, over there. I turned my head to look. Chin Mu was walking towards me with a bamboo tube filled with water, naturally handing it to me as she passed by. Awake? Yes. Chin Mu, drink some water, we'll leave soon, can't delay. She walked past me. The subordinate looked at us with suspicion. Young master, why do I feel something is off between you two? I took a sip of water. What? The subordinate scratched his head. Can't say, just a feeling. I patted him. Stop feeling, go prepare, we need to get on the road. All right. To avoid any more unexpected incidents, I abandoned the originally planned route and took a detour. Though it was a longer journey, it was safer. The convoy arrived in the capital city by dusk 5 days later. From a distance, you could see people waiting at the city gate. The leading few looked serious, and the guards beside them were strong and vigilant, watching the surroundings. Initially, due to the rules of the Tiger Escort Agency, I didn't inquire much about Miss Chin's background. But now it seems her identity is quite extraordinary. Not like an ordinary official's daughter. We didn't enter the city, stopping not far from the city gate. I dismounted and walked to the carriage, reaching out my hand. Moo, we've arrived at the capital. I often teased her like this along the way. After all, she knew I was a woman. But the young lady was aloof and often didn't pay much attention to me. Chin Mu lifted the curtain and jumped out of the carriage. I withdrew my ignored hand, not feeling embarrassed. Look, your people are here. I pointed to the distance. Chin Mu looked over expressionlessly, then said, this is goodbye. With that, she walked towards them. I plucked a wild chrysanthemum from the roadside and ran to her side. She turned her head in surprise. I quickly placed the flower in her hair. Oh, this looks much better. I laughed. Young ladies should always wear some flowers. All right, go quickly, we'll meet again someday. Chin-moo gave me a deep look, walked a few steps, then stopped. She asked me, "What's your name?" I was stunned for a moment, then replied loudly, "Xia-su." Half a month later, on a certain day, I was returning from martial arts practice, and hadn't even entered the door when I sensed something was off. I bumped into the subordinate who was coming out, and I hooked his neck with my hand. "What's going on?" His reaction surprised me. His face flushed red as he broke free, stammering, Young master, the boss is in the backyard, he wants you to go over." After saying that, he ran off in a flash. I walked into the escort agency and noticed a group of people in light armor standing in the front yard. They stared at me without moving, making me feel a bit uneasy. Ignoring them, I went straight through the corridor to the backyard. My father was sitting there, sighing. "Father, what's happened?" He glanced at me and then took something out from his arms. "See for yourself." It was an Imperial edict, bright yellow. I slowly opened it, and upon reading the contents, I couldn't help but change my expression. "Father! This is..." He grabbed my arm, staring at me. "Susu, how is your female identity exposed?" I was stunned for a long time, not speaking. Chin-moo. It could only be her. This was a marriage edict, granting my marriage. My marriage to the crown prince. I'm a bit confused, my family just runs an escort agency. Why would the crown prince choose me over so many noble ladies in the capital? My father sighed. "You had a severe illness at 7, and you forgot everything before then." I nodded blankly, yes. My father continued, "So you also forgot that our Xia family used to live in the capital." The wedding date was set very soon, and I was practically rushed onto the carriage. I hadn't worn women's clothing in over a decade. Before leaving, the subordinate looked at me with a flushed face, hesitating to speak. I glared at him. "What do you want to say?" He avoided my gaze, finally squeezing out, "Young master, I wish you happiness." I smiled slightly, my lips barely moving. "Happiness my foot." The convoy was about to set off for the capital. The subordinate asked in confusion, "Why isn't the boss coming out?" I lowered the curtain. "He drank too much last night and is still asleep. When he wakes, tell him for me that I'll take good care of myself in the capital, so he shouldn't worry." As soon as I finished speaking, the convoy started moving. The carriage gradually left, and I leaned against the window, letting out a long sigh. Last night, my father pressed some valuables into my hands. "Susu, hurry and leave." I was shocked. "What's wrong?" He said with grief. "I've heard that the crown prince is born with an ailment and doesn't have much time left. They want you to marry him to bring good fortune. Listen to me. Hurry and leave." I didn't say anything, knocking him out with a backhand. If I left, the Tiger Escort Agency would be in trouble. I didn't want to see him sad, so I boarded the carriage to the capital while he was still asleep. I spent a month outside the palace learning etiquette from a nanny. Then, on the auspicious day that had been chosen long ago, I was carried into the Crown Prince's Eastern Palace in a red sedan chair. After completing the tedious procedures, my waist was about to break. This was more tiring than practicing martial arts. I sat anxiously on the bed, covered with a bridal veil. I was a bit anxious, needing to use the restroom. I waited and waited, but the crown prince still hadn't come. I couldn't hold it any longer, so I lifted the veil and rushed out the door. After taking care of business, I got lost in the vast back garden of the Eastern Palace. I wandered around in circles, unable to find the bridal chamber. How strange. I looked around, seeing no one, so I kicked off the ground and leaped onto the wall. Then I locked eyes with someone on the other side. Moo? Chin-moo stood below, looking up at me, a bit dazed. I jumped down directly, landing in front of her. She was dressed in a red robe, with her hair tied back with a red silk ribbon, looking quite beautiful. "You look really beautiful." I complimented her without hesitation, then suddenly realized. "Why are you here? And wearing a wedding robe?" She was about to speak when I vaguely guessed something. "Did the crown prince marry you too?" Chin-moo looked at me, her expression unclear. I was already indignant. This crown prince is so unethical. He's about to die himself, marrying such a beautiful woman to be a widow. Qin Mu frowned. The crown prince is dying? I nodded confidently, yes. He doesn't have much time left. Although my female identity was probably leaked by her, I couldn't bring myself to blame her. I couldn't help it, she was just too beautiful. I sighed, don't worry, after the crown prince dies, I'll take you away. You're so beautiful, you'll definitely find a good husband. As soon as I finished speaking, hurried footsteps came from both the front and back. I reacted quickly, grabbing Qin Mu's arm, let's go. She held my hand in return, why run? I was stunned, right, why run? I hadn't done anything wrong. As we spoke, the path was already blocked by people. A nanny in festive attire rushed to Qin Mu, Your Highness. The crown princess is missing. Her gaze swept over my face. Her words stopped abruptly. The crown princess has been found. Inside the bridal chamber. I sat across from Qin Mu. Yes, that's right, Qin Mu, Crown Prince Qin Mu. I shook my leg and propped my head up, looking at him, care to explain, Your Highness? I said the last two words through gritted teeth. Qin Mu was silent for a long time before speaking, I owe you an apology for this matter. Earlier this year, I went to City H to recuperate. But now the capital has urgently summoned me back, and I have no choice but to return. But the court is full of intrigue, and there are always those who want my life. To avoid drawing attention, I chose to disguise myself and hired your agency. I nodded, I see. Qin Mu glanced at me, as for marrying you, I specifically requested it from His Majesty. I raised my hand to interrupt him. Your Highness, I looked at him very seriously. Since we've already gone through the wedding ceremony, we're in this together. There are some things that are better said openly. You should have known my identity long ago, right? After all, with so many powerful escort agencies in the world. He specifically chose the Tiger Escort Agency, which is hard not to overthink. Qin Mu nodded, the late Grand Tutor Xiao's granddaughter, Xia Su. The Xiao family was once a renowned noble family in the capital. But later, due to a rebellion, the Grand Tutor Xia took his own life before the red gates of the palace. After the rebellion was quelled, the Xiao family fell into decline. Grand Tutor Xiao was a straightforward person, and during his decades in court, he offended too many people. To stay away from disputes and protect ourselves, my father took me away from the capital. We went to an unknown small town and started an escort agency. A middle-aged man with a young girl naturally drew attention. And within half a year, enemies came looking for us. That time, my father almost lost his life. After that, I went from being a girl to pretending to be a boy. My thoughts were pulled back, and I looked at Qin Mu again. So, what does Your Highness mean? Qin Mu said solemnly, the court is now dominated by the faction of the virtuous. And most of them were students of Grand Tutor Xia, who had a great influence on them. I suddenly understood, so you want to use my identity to win over the virtuous faction. Qin Mu didn't speak, which was a tacit agreement. He stood up and respectfully bowed to me. I used you for my own selfish reasons, and I hope you can forgive me. His sudden action startled me. Looking at his long, ink-black hair hanging by his side, the anger in my heart inexplicably dissipated a bit. This person is quite straightforward. Under the light of the wedding candles, I talked with Qin Mu for a long time. In the end, I signed an agreement with him. Once Qin Mu secures his position as crown prince and gains a foothold in the court, I will divorce him and leave the capital on my own accord. I had already considered the matter of divorce on the first day of marriage. That's just like me. In the dead of night, the atmosphere in the room gradually changed. The candlelight fell on Qin Mu's face, and I was entranced. Qin Mu said, how about? My mind went blank, and I blurted out, we go to sleep? It's late, we should indeed rest. He paused, then added, I'll sleep in the adjacent room. I watched him get up and walk towards the door. TSK, why does it feel like a cooked duck is flying away? TSK, beauty has misled me. As Qin Mu's hand touched the door, I couldn't help but call out, wait a minute. He turned to look at me, is there something else? I tilted my head, looking at him, I suddenly remembered something. He looked at me without speaking. I spoke frankly, that day in the hot spring on the mountain, you touched me. Chin Mu's face instantly turned red, and the hand holding the door unconsciously clenched. I pretended not to notice and continued, you even saw me completely. Miss Xia. Chin Mu interrupted me, his voice sounding a bit embarrassed. What happened then was an accident, I will compensate you. I found him very interesting. Clearly, I was the one who was seen, but with his demeanor, one would think I took advantage of him. Seeing him about to turn and leave again, I stood up and blocked his way. Chin Mu was taken aback. What are you doing? I blinked. If you're going to compensate, now's the time. Chin Mu frowned. Now? I smiled. You can let me touch you back. In the agreement I signed with him, he added another clause. Xia Su is prohibited from being improper before the divorce. In other words, this person is really stingy. According to the housekeeper, ever since I married Chin Mu, his days at court have been much smoother. He has also been able to gradually pursue his ambitions with the support of the virtuous faction. Even the influential second prince has become much more restrained. Everything seems to be moving in a positive direction. That's really nice. And I spend my days lounging in this courtyard, eating, drinking, tending to flowers, and playing with dogs. My life is even more leisurely than the old man next door to the escort agency. I'm not in a hurry. When I'm really bored, I practice with my spear, and life goes on. However, someone couldn't stand my peace and had to stir up trouble. Your Highness, the second princess invites you to accompany her to pay respects to the Empress. I put down the spear in my hand and took the invitation she handed over. Can I not go? The nanny hesitated for a moment before saying, it wouldn't be appropriate. I nodded. Got it. Well, then I'll go. The maid dressed me up. I lifted my skirt and headed out of the residence. The nanny called after me, looking a bit exasperated. Your Highness, please, walk slower. I replied, all right. Then, with a whoosh, I got into the carriage. Just as I arrived outside the Empress's palace, I ran into the second princess, Liang Manju. She saw me and said sarcastically, oh, isn't this the crown princess? I smiled, you got it right. She sneered, a country bumpkin really thinks she's something now? I continued to smile, no, the second princess is the real deal, I can't compare. Her expression changed, and she was about to cause trouble when the Empress's nanny came out. Crown princess, second princess, the Empress invites you in. I didn't look at Liang Manju and went into the palace first. The Empress is Chin Mu's mother, so she naturally treats me well. In contrast, the second prince's mother is the favored noble consort Yang, whom the Empress has always disliked, so she doesn't show Liang Manju any kindness either. We hadn't been there long before the Empress grew tired. Liang Manju and I left the palace, and just as I was about to head back, she grabbed my arm. Why are you in such a hurry? Liang Manju smiled at me. There's a flower viewing banquet at noble consort Yang's place. Why don't we go take a look? Looking at her smile, I sincerely said, sis, stop smiling, your face is stiff. In the end, I went to the flower viewing banquet. After all, you can avoid trouble for a while, but not forever. If someone wants to cause trouble, I can't avoid it. There were quite a few people at the banquet, and when they saw us, there was a moment of silence. From their expressions, I knew these people were all with Liang Manju. I kept a smile on my face, responding to everyone with yes, you're right. Though it lacked authority, it was enough to brush them off. After making a round, Liang Manju's face turned green. I smiled at her, we've admired the flowers, so I won't disturb everyone any longer. I'll take my leave. I didn't wait for her to speak and turned to leave. Damn, these clothes are uncomfortable. The shoes are uncomfortable. The headpiece is uncomfortable. I felt uneasy all over and hurried home to change. I was so focused on getting home that I didn't notice Liang Manju catching up. As I passed the small stone bridge by the rockery, Liang Manju suddenly pulled me, Crown Princess. She pulled me off balance, and I fell backward toward the lake below the bridge. Before I fell, I saw Liang Manju's malicious smile. But who am I? I'm Xia Su, the young master of the Tiger Escort Agency, a martial arts prodigy. Falling into the water so easily? Impossible, absolutely impossible. I used my waist and abdomen to push off the stone bridge and then leveraged myself onto the top of the rockery. I sat there looking down at Liang Manju. I couldn't help but whistle. Why not come up and have a seat? Everyone was dumbfounded. Just then, someone happened to walk in through the garden archway. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw them and was stunned. Qin Mu, along with the second Prince Qin Feng. There were several young officials following them. Damn. As the crown princess, is it inappropriate for me to climb so high? I was just about to jump down when Qin Mu already saw me. In that instant, his voice cracked. Xia Su? I chuckled awkwardly. Your Highness is here too? What a coincidence, ha ha ha. He walked to the side of the rockery and looked up at me. What are you doing up there? I glanced at the people around us who were quietly observing me and said shyly. I just wanted to come up and enjoy the view. I accidentally climbed too high and can't get down. I pretended to be upset and turned my head, then pinched myself hard. Xia Su. You have to keep acting. Just as I was about to ask someone to bring me a ladder, I saw Qin Mu open his arms towards me from below. I said, huh? Qin Mu said, jump down, I'll catch you. I looked at him without speaking. He added, don't be afraid. I wasn't afraid, mainly worried about crushing him. With so many people watching, I couldn't delay too long. After much consideration, I decided to take a gamble. Gamble that I wouldn't crush him. I adjusted my posture and leaped in Qin Mu's direction. Qin Mu took a step forward and caught me steadily in his arms. Wow. I looked at him in surprise. The crown prince looked frail, but he was surprisingly strong. I placed my hand on his chest and couldn't help but feel it. Quite firm. Before I could fully appreciate it, he quickly set me down. I looked at his slightly red ears and came to a conclusion. The crown prince is both reserved and innocent. The crown prince is ignoring me. He said I violated the agreement. Heaven knows, I wasn't being inappropriate, I just accidentally touched him. Yes, accidentally. I leaned on Qin Mu's window and started to cry pitifully. So many people targeted me, and now you're ignoring me too. I'm so sad. Qin Mu paused his writing for a moment, then said, in the future, if you don't want to attend such occasions, then don't go. I was taken aback, the nanny said. No matter what others say, Qin Mu repeated, if you don't want to go, then don't. I've used you to gain a foothold in court. I can't deny you this bit of freedom. His voice was calm, and he didn't even look at me. But I was stunned. Did I get hurt in the back garden just now? Otherwise, why is my heart beating so fast? Well, I think I forgot to clean my spear today, I should go do that. With that, I turned and ran. I ran so fast that I missed the fleeting smile on Qin Mu's lips. Qin Mu was making a name for himself in court, and the emperor valued him more and more. Not long ago, a flood hit the Galine River, submerging many nearby villages. Even the nearest city sea was affected. The emperor decreed that the crown prince should go to city sea to console the victims on behalf of the emperor. It was both training and a test. After all, no one knew when the flood might strike again. On the day Qin Mu left the capital, he got up very early. I watched him pace in front of my door for a long time, but he never knocked. As he boarded the carriage, I called out, Your Highness, sit tight, we're ready to depart. Qin Mu lifted the curtain in disbelief and looked at me. Xia Su? What are you doing here? Dressed in a martial outfit and wearing a bamboo hat, I turned and smiled. I'm the young master of the Tiger Escort Agency. Escorting you to City C is no difficult task for me. Qin Mu stared at me intently. Feeling my face heat up under his gaze, I added, You'll have to pay, though. Qin Mu laughed. All right. Our journey to City C was quite fortunate. The floodwaters had mostly receded. The streets of City C were filled with refugees. And as soon as our carriage entered the city, many people started following us. There were frail children running alongside. Please, kind sir, spare some food, please. Looking at them, I was reminded of the time when I followed my father around, hiding from our enemies. TSK, I wasn't much better off than they are now. Feeling a pang of sympathy, I reached for the food hanging at my waist, only to have Chinmu stop me. Xia Su, we can't give it now. I looked at him, and after a few seconds of eye contact, I realized I was careless. If we took out the food now, our carriage wouldn't be able to move. The carriage stopped at the city governor's residence. And out of habit, I jumped down and extended my hand inside. I was momentarily stunned. Just as I was about to withdraw my hand, a warm and cool hand grasped mine. Chinmu stepped out of the carriage with a smile, holding my hand, and said, "Thank you, my crown princess." The disaster in City C was severe, and we ended up staying for 2 months. Chinmu left early and returned late every day, often working by candlelight through the night. He truly was working for the people. I couldn't help him much in this regard, so I could only do small, insignificant things, like making him a cup of hot tea or placing a small flower on his desk. The days passed one by one. Even far away in City C, Chinmu managed to handle court affairs. After all, before this, the virtuous faction had already fully supported him. The second prince frequently faced obstacles in court. The more anxious he became, the more mistakes he made. The emperor was displeased and had ordered him to reflect on his actions in confinement. When I heard this news, I felt a faint sense of happiness, thinking that I might have actually helped him. 2 months later, the disaster in City C was under control, and we boarded the carriage for the return journey. This time, it was the crown prince's turn to drive the carriage for me. I lifted the curtain to look at him. "Are you driving the carriage for me because you don't want to pay?" Chinmu paused, then slightly raised his lips, "If you say so." We passed a small path, lined with wildflowers. Chinmu leaned over, picked a flower, and carefully placed it in my hair. I stared at his alluring Adam's apple, momentarily dazed. "What's this for?" Chinmu looked at me. "It looks nice on you." I smiled. "I look nice even without it. I'm really not used to wearing flowers in my hair." And I was about to take it off when Chinmu spoke again. He said, "Young ladies look prettier with flowers." The words sounded so familiar. I paused, and slowly lowered my hand from the flower. Since returning to the capital from City C, Crown Prince Chinmu had been highly regarded by the emperor. I've heard that he's been entrusted to review the memorials on behalf of the emperor. The people also praised this prince endlessly. Listening to their praises, I began to feel troubled. Does this mean Chinmu has secured his position in court? Does that mean I have to leave? TSK, I don't really want to leave. But the agreement is still there. I propped my head up, pondering for a long time. How about destroying the agreement? No, that's too obvious. Suddenly, an idea struck me, and I stood up abruptly. I can't destroy my own, but I can destroy Chinmu's copy. Then I can play the victim. Ha ha ha. What a brilliant idea. I dusted off my clothes and headed towards Chinmu's courtyard. He should be in the study reviewing memorials at this time. I boldly entered his courtyard. Then suddenly stopped, pressing myself against the archway in shock. Why are there people here? And 2 of them. I vaguely recognized the other person as Chinmu's advisor, Zhang Junzhe. Their conversation drifted over from inside. I steadied myself, about to sneak away, when I heard Zhang Junzhe's words that made me stop. He said, "Your Highness, please consider carefully what the Empress said about selecting a concubine. The Minister of Revenue's daughter and General Pei's youngest daughter are both excellent choices, well-educated and graceful. More importantly, they would greatly benefit you in the future." I stood there stunned for a long time before hurriedly leaving. I almost stepped on my own skirt. What a mess. Why should I stay? They're about to take a concubine, and I'm here to applaud and celebrate their happiness? No need, no need. I was about to return to my room to pack my things, but stopped abruptly as I passed the storeroom. He used me, so taking some compensation isn't too much, right? Not too much. I had been rummaging through the room for quite some time. I almost turned the whole place upside down. How strange. Where is my agreement? I stopped a maid passing by. "Has anyone been in my room today?" The maid replied, "Today, apart from His Highness the Crown Prince visiting your courtyard, no one else has been here." I was taken aback. When did he come? The maid's expression turned a bit odd, her eyes darting around, occasionally glancing behind me. I quickly turned my head. I saw a foot quickly retract around the corridor corner. I waved the maid away. Then, without a sound, I jumped onto the roof and made my way along it to the corridor. I looked down at Chin Mu, who was pressed against the wall, lost in thought. He slowly stretched his head to peek into the courtyard, and seeing no one, he sighed in relief. I leaped down, landing right in front of him. Chin Mu's eyes widened as he looked at me, his expression was truly remarkable. I pushed him against the wall. Then reached out, touched his chest, and pulled out the agreement. I raised an eyebrow at him. Your Highness, care to explain? Chin Mu resumed his usual calm demeanor, slowly speaking. I can't explain. I didn't want you to leave, so I resorted to this unspeakable method. In this matter, I am utterly defenseless. His openness left me momentarily speechless. I sneered, wouldn't my leaving be perfect? It would make room for you to marry a concubine. Chin Mu frowned. Who said I want to marry a concubine? He quickly realized, you went to my courtyard just now? I looked at him without speaking. Chin Mu sighed, since you went, why not stay a while longer to hear me out? I was taken aback. Hear what? Chin Mu said, Xia Su, I will not marry a concubine. I, Chin Mu, have never thought of relying on a woman for anything. When I married you, it wasn't for the reason I told you back then. Even before I returned to the capital, the virtuous faction was already on my side. I looked at him in disbelief. Then you. Chin Mu looked at me intently. I married you simply because I wanted to. He said he had seen me long before. Much earlier than I knew. That year, I was 7, the capital was in rebellion. And Grand Tutor Xia was surrounded at the palace gates by rebels to buy time for the young prince and his own granddaughter to escape. He refused to surrender, his blood staining the red walls. At that time, you and I were hiding in a haystack in the alley. You were much calmer than I was, covering my mouth tightly to keep me silent. I was so scared, I turned and bit your shoulder. Chin Mu pointed to my back. Among the many scars on your back, one was left by me. I instinctively covered my shoulder, my mind in chaos. The things he said. I didn't remember any of it. All these years, I've been looking for you. Requesting to marry you was a decision I made after considering it for decades. At that moment, fireworks exploded in my mind. 3 years later, I was riding a horse, looking gloomy. The subordinate ran to my side. Young master, what's wrong? You were bored, so His Highness the Crown Prince has already let you out to escort the caravan. I looked at him expressionlessly, then turned my gaze to the dense crowd of guards. There are more people protecting me than protecting the goods. With such a show of force, who would dare to rob the caravan? It's boring, so boring. When we returned to the capital, guests were visiting the Crown Prince's residence. The nanny said they were envoys from another country, visiting specially. I nodded, intending to go back to my room to change clothes. But as I passed the garden, I heard laughter and merriment. Beautiful women in exotic costumes were dancing freely. The foreign envoy laughed heartily. Does your highness like it? I couldn't see Chin Mu's expression clearly. But it didn't matter. My expression wasn't pleasant anyway. I walked lightly to stand behind Chin Mu, slowly speaking. Does your highness like it? The foreign envoy was startled by me, turning his head with a frown. His expression was disdainful. The servants in His Highness' residence are truly lacking in manners. Chin Mu glanced at him, raised his hand to drink a sip of water. This is my crown princess. Seeing the long spear in my hand, the envoy quickly took the beauties and left. After they left, I smiled slightly at Chin Mu. Was it nice to look at? Chin Mu remained expressionless. Not nice. You looked at her waist. No. You even smiled. No. You did. Really didn't. Chin Mu bent down and picked me up horizontally. I asked him, what are you doing? Chin Mu, going back to the room. After a few steps, he suddenly turned a corner. I asked again, what are you doing? Chin Mu, going to wash first. You dislike me? No. The foreign envoy who had returned to the entrance was dumbfounded. Turning to ask the servant now at the door, what are they doing? The The servant calmly replied, "Just a bit of fun."